business. Well, we'll be back from the break. You're still watching STARTIMES Business. It's 28 minutes to the top of the hour. I'm Andrew Barigi. I'm here with Masika Tume. It's a fresh week. It's a Monday, definitely. Of course, the last day of the month, that is of July. But of course, on STARTIMES Business, we're here to tell you that, despite that, you have to, keep your priorities really set and don't give up, regardless of the month reaching where it is, and you haven't probably, the year. Reaching where it is and you haven't achieved what you had hoped, what you had planned to achieve, well, it's never too late. You can still make it despite the remaining days of the month. Well, right about now, as we're heading into what's happening, that is on the East African community, that is on the Caribbean, East Africa, as also we check out what's happening onto the international scene at the same time. But of course, the markets on the ZAB were also on. I would love to remind you that Star 292 hash is the code for you there, which will avail you with options for buying government bond securities for a fee of just 15,000 Ghana shillings. Now the market's going to be opening at exactly 8:15 a.m. and they're going to be running all the way to 3:15 p.m. East African time. This is effective Monday up to Friday, apart from the weekends and the public holidays. Now, like the recent weekend we've been in, the markets have not been in operation, but of course, despite that, you have all these days to capitalize and make some money. And Zabu made this a reality. And remember, on top of Star 292 hash, you have to register with your national identification number. And Zabu says, "My money, my future." And All Tech East Africa tells you, do something new. Remember, it's the 2023. Well, now heading to Caribbean, East Africa, we kickstart off with the Central Bank of Kenya, of course, to consult the International Monetary Fund when it loses handle on inflation. Now, the CBK required to explain reasons why this inflation came about. Now, the International Monetary Fund revealed the close with the Central Bank of Kenya as it sought to have bigger say in the decisions taken by Kenya's Apex Bank in its fast to contain a runaway inflation. Now, in its latest report, the IMF says that the Central Bank of Kenya will consult with its executive board, that is to set the monetary policy stance when the inflation rate persistently sticks above the 7.5% upper ceiling. Now, the close part of the ongoing arrangement between Kenya and the IMF was first triggered in December after inflation stayed above 7.5% in the previous 3 months. Now, it was triggered again in June, forcing the Central Bank of Kenya to lift the benchmark interest rate, which is known as the central bank rate, at an emergency monetary policy meeting. Now, the CBK is required to explain reasons why inflation has breached the upper limit and discuss with the lender potential policy responses and the outlook on the inflation at the same time. Now, the CBK, of course, we see that in December, for instance, the CBK told the IMF the main drivers of inflation were in part due to the global shocks triggered, that is by the Ukraine war, which affected the pricing of the key commodities, that is including fuel, wheat, edible oils, and fertilizers. Of course, as part of the policy responses, the Central Bank of Kenya noted it tightened the monetary policy, that is by increasing the CBR. Now, according to the Bank of Kenya, the Central Bank of Kenya, monetary policy tightening would be complemented by fiscal measures taken to moderate the prices of specific commodities while it continues to monitor the drivers of inflationary pressures. Now, further into this report, we see that the Central Bank of Kenya governor, that is Kamau Thuge, told the IMF that inflation would steadily come down and return to the targeted band in months, even as food and fuel prices present persistent pressure. Now, Dr. Thuge was forced into a jumbo interest rate lift within 25 days of taking charge at the Apex bank following the downside inflation expectations in June. Now, on June 26th, the MPC lifted the benchmark interest rate to 10.5%. That is from 9.5%, leaving the central bank rate at the highest rate since July 2016. Now, inflation has already handed Dr. Tagi his first staff test as food and fuel prices pressure explodes by impacting the cost of non-food and fuel commodities, core inflation. Now, of course, inflation eased slightly, that is in June, to 7.9% from the 8% in May, but consumer prices are expected to increase in July, and of course, largely from the implementation of higher value-added tax, that is on petroleum products, at the standard rate of 16% from the 8%, as you can see. Now, that's the Central Bank of Kenya, of course, consulting IMF when it comes to the central bank rate as one of the ways the nation is trying to handle inflation. But of course, the ultimate question in here is that ever since when the International Monetary Fund really start to have an influence in the central banks? But anyway, they lend these countries money, so they can actually have that. But would that really be the right option for that? And if I may ask, if there is consultation done to these higher bodies, are their advisors best on the well-being of the citizens, but of course by establishing favorable fiscal policies amongst these different citizens? Because remember, we're talking about the central bank rate, and once the central bank rate has effects when it comes to the rate at which banks borrow from the central bank, that means that will determine the interest rates at that, and now the interest rates will also mean that the business people that are supposed to develop the economy, they're supposed to borrow this money from these commercial banks, whose lending rate and interest rate is being determined by the central bank rate. So the ultimate question is that, are these bodies, do they give this advice in line with the citizens into those countries by encouraging actually these central banks to put up policies which favor the citizens of those countries? Well, that's a question for you to think about. But I would believe it would be much more better if we could have actually some sort of independence when it comes to determining these policies within our domestic economies. I don't know what you think about that.
Oh, well, of course, shifting our eyes to Zanzibar, of course, they are diversifying with technology, and of course, as a means to transform to digital economy. Now, Zanzibar, a renowned tourist destination, is taking steps to diversify its economy by venturing into information and technology sector. Now, the Zanzibar ICT Infrastructure Agency, that is ZICTIA, is spearheading several IT projects, including establishing an international gateway from Mombasa, constructing a data center, and creating a digital free zone to attract businesses. Now, traditionally reliant on tourism, Zanzibar now seeks to generate employment opportunities and boost national income by investing in the IT industry. In collaborative 3-day conference organized by ZICTIA, that is the Zanzibar ICT Infrastructure Agency, in partnership with companies like Freefold Technologies' role in urban expansion were showcased. Now, the president, Dr. Hussein Mwinyi, believes that these enterprises will result in growth of local talent and lead to significant developments in the ICT sector. Now, the President Mwinyi promises full support from his administration to ensure successful execution of these initiatives. Now, he further added on to express readiness to work together as a team to implement necessary changes in policy and, of course, authority and registration, transforming Zanzibar into a thriving digital-free zone. The key components include establishing a strong international gateway infrastructure, a submarine cable data center, and of course a nationwide fiber optic network with collaboration with the private sector. Now, ZICTIA Executive Director Shukur plans to acquire 3,000 hectares of the cyber metropolis within the digital-free zone to attract major corporate investments. Now, currently, the Freefold primarily supports innovative small businesses, but of course, the ambition extends to developing the internet in this thriving economic zone. Now, according to Christoph, the founder of Threefold Company, Zanzibar not only offers a promising investment location, but also boasts a conducive environment for change. Now, the internet is now an essential part of learning, communication, and innovation. Will play a significant role in the Digital Free Zone initiative. Now, embracing digitalization could bring great economic benefits